So, universal life force energy is really love. And so, if you're carrying a lot of love and the desire to help people, and you have sort of an affinity for healing, then that will come through, before the attunement. The attunement just makes it a little bit stronger.
2, 1, 0.
Hello, welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. This is your host, Orion. How are you doing? Thank you for being here, watching on YouTube or listening to me. This episode is all about Reiki and light language and the mystery of astral realms. With my guest, the awesome Karen Wilson. She is an energy healing activator, light language channeler, teacher, and Akashic Records Reader. She connects with your own spiritual team to access healing and awakening energies for your highest good. She's been an energy healer for over 12 years. Karen regularly offers Reiki and metaphysical classes, guided meditations, speech circles, ceremonies, retreats, and events. She also provides distance energy healing, animal Reiki, healing circles, spiritual life coaching, and speaks on metaphysical topics. Thank you for being here and thank you for listening. You are in for a treat. And if you are loving this podcast, if you are enjoying it, listening to it, please share it with your friend. That will help me a lot. And what else will help the podcast will be if you can go on the Apple app and it will take you just a few seconds to review it. Because the more you review it, the more it's gonna show up and the more we can extend this awesome knowledge to everybody else. So if you can review it, hopefully 5 stars, okay, yeah, please do so. I will highly appreciate it. And now, without further ado, I love you. On to the show. Hi, Karen. Welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Orion. Thank you for having me visit with you today. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to speaking with you.
Yes. How did you discover your passion for healing and helping others?
Well, for me, it was sort of a long story. And it started with something that wasn't very pleasant. My first husband actually became ill with cancer when I was in my early 30s. And that just started me on a path of asking questions around life and the universe. I guess in my grief, and I think that's what happens sometimes, is the spiritual path sometimes opens up for people who have some sort of a shock in their life. And that's what happened with me. So I had, a regular sort of a life. I, went to college, got married, had a baby, had a professional job. And I continued with that for a number of years after he passed. But I guess that was sort of the starting point for me. It's just I started doing just a lot of questioning and reading. And then along my path, I came across Reiki as a healing modality. And it interested me, and I began to work with it, and I enjoyed it. I felt that I could feel the energy coming through my hands and working with people. And then along the way, my professional job, after 26 years, just sort of faded away. And I started to do this work full time, and I've been doing it now for 10 years. And I'm a teacher as well. I teach Reiki, and what I always tell my students is it's the energy, it's the work that guides you. But I just started with Reiki sessions with clients, and I just have enjoyed it for the past 10 years, almost 10 years.
Yeah. So, does anyone have Reiki? Do we all have Reiki? And what is it? How do you channel it?
Well, the definition of Reiki is universal life force energy. So that's what, if you look out the window, that's what makes the trees grow and the wind blow. So it's life force energy, and it is around all of us. But what happens with the Reiki energy is that you're usually attuned by a Reiki master, and after that attunement, then you're able to channel the Reiki energy through your hands, and anyone can do it. In fact, I think everyone should take a Reiki class and get a Reiki 1 attunement because it's such a beautiful thing to have. there's many people who have natural healing ability, and many of the students who come to me, they're already channeling energy. They just are born with a healing energy in their hands. So, but Reiki is a specific modality, and some people confuse Reiki sort of as a universal word for energy healing, and it is not. It is a particular frequency that comes through your hands after the Reiki attunement. But there's no prerequisite, just an interest in pursuing some study around it.
Right. And when you do Reiki, do you channel the energy through your hands and then you take on the person's symptoms through you, or how do you do it?
You do channel through your hands. So Reiki comes through your eyes, your hands, mainly your hands, but it also comes through your eyes, your heart, and the bottom of your feet. And so you allow the energy to come in through your crown chakra and then move into your body and coming out your hands or eyes or heart, mainly your hands, although I always say that really good healers channel a lot of energy through their heart. And that energy is just placed on the person. You can put your hands on the person directly, or you can hover your hands over the person. We work with energy centers in the body called chakras. But the wonderful thing about Reiki is the really wise, it's a universal energy. It works for body, mind, and spirit. So it'll work with for physical ailments or emotional ailments, spiritual ailments. And it's an intelligent energy. So we don't diagnose. We don't say where it's going. We just place our hands on the body and the energy takes off from there. A good healer will not take on the ailments of the client, and there's ways that we teach to help prevent that.
For example, somebody
Well,
doesn't
for
know.
one thing, that it's really important that you're grounded, so that your own energy is grounded. So it's sort of like a house, where a house is grounded, so that when lightning strikes it, it doesn't blow up, catch on fire. So it's sort of the same. We want to ground our energy before we work. And we can do that, through intention of grounding down through the feet, using the breath. Some people use they make sure they have some sort of a grounding stone on them, like a black tourmaline or something like that, hematite, on their bodies to help them ground. And then afterwards, there's processes that we do with our intention to make sure that we're disconnecting our energy from that of our client. We want to make sure that we ask the universal energy or ask the energy that's sort of linked between us to be dropped, and that any energy that we've taken on from the client, because sometimes that's possible, because people often will dump a lot of energy in the healing session if they have a lot of emotion, or if they have a lot of hurt or pain, physical pain or emotional pain. They'll sort of leave it behind. And so we do some practices of brushing off, washing our hands, grounding our energy, asking that our energy be placed down into the earth, touching a tree, that sort of thing. So it's very important to be intentional in what we're doing with the energy after the session.
And with your students, did you see any remarkable healing happen in the room, even when they're just beginners?
Absolutely. I've seen, so when they come for the class, and I always make this quite clear, any students who are listening to me will probably roll their eyes, because I try to make it quite clear that the class does not attune them to the Reiki, what we call the Reiki ray. They need to come back for another appointment with the attunement, but which attunes them to what we call the Reiki ray. But even in the class, a lot of people who come to me as students, they're gifted healers to begin with, whether they know it or not. They've probably been healers in past lives, or they have this energy in their hands, which comes from love and the desire to heal. And so I've just noticed in the classes where people are like, whoa, your hands are hot, or wow, my back was hurting and now it's not, that sort of thing. So universal life force energy is really love. And so if you're carrying a lot of love and the desire to help people, and you have sort of an affinity for healing, then that will come through, before the attunement. The attunement just makes it a little bit stronger.
What is the attunement? Is it you? What do you do there to initiate them into becoming Reiki
So
healers?
the attunement is taking the student's hands 3 times. We place there's Reiki symbols that we learn, and so when you become a Reiki master, you learn how to pass the attunement. It's a fairly simple process that we do with the person's hands, and we just do that for 3 times. The way that I do it is I have my students come back, and they get the attunement sort of baked into an energy healing session, so that they have the opportunity to, relax and enjoy the session. I also work with crystal bowls, the vibrational instruments, and also a crystal healer. So I sort of get the experience of an energy session, but I just do the attunement within the session. And then I have them place their hands on me so that they can see, and I can tell them, because I've been working with energy for so many years, that I can feel energy very acutely. So I have them place their hands on me, and then I tell them like where the energy is moving in my body, how I feel it moving, the nature of it, and that sort of thing. And I started doing that because when I first started teaching, I would see my students later on somewhere, and I'd say, how's the Reiki going? And they would say, oh, I don't know. I don't think it works for me. And I'd be like, oh, it works for everybody. So, and I started doing that right after the attunement so that they could really see that it is working, that something is happening. Because sometimes it's hard for healers when they first start, if they haven't become attuned to feeling energy, they just don't feel it coming. Some do and some don't. So I just want to make sure they know it's working.
Do you do it also remotely via Zoom?
I do. We do healing remotely. I don't do it via Zoom. I do, but what I will do for a distance session is I go into my healing room. I set it up exactly the same way I would. I check their people's chakras. I do that with a pendulum. I place crystals on the table the same way as I would, as if there was a person there. And then we do the session at a distance, and I usually record the session so that they get the benefit of, for me, I always tell my students that Reiki is just a very simple practice of hands-on healing, but because I've just worked with energy for so long, I've adopted other modalities that go in. So I use the crystal healing and the light language channeling, and I'm a clairvoyant, so I'll see some, visions as I work with them. So I just include that in the recording, and then I set it up so that they can use it later as a meditation, to help them, and then the energy will come through again.
How did you?
But distance healing is definitely a thing that happens.
Yes, yes. How did you develop the clairvoyant side of you?
That's a really interesting question, and I was not a clairvoyant at all prior to this. I feel that I was an empath, and that an empath is like someone who feels other people's feelings, although I didn't really know that. I just thought everyone felt other people's feelings. The clairvoyance came to me more specifically after the Reiki 2 attunement. So in Reiki, there's 3 levels. There's Reiki 1, and that's where you can use the energy for your friends and your family. And there's Reiki 2, which allows you to become a practitioner, and then the Reiki Master Teacher level. So after the Reiki 2 attunement, there's an attunement at each level. So after the Reiki 2 attunement, teachers often hold something called at their home or wherever they're working, called Reiki Circle, where they invite their students to come back and practice. And I have those at my home here. And so I was at my Reiki master's place, and we were doing some practicing with others on the table. And I just noticed that there was like this movie playing in my head of the woman who was on the table. I saw her in like this bed, and she was just like completely flaked out. And I can still see that bed in my mind because it made such an impression on me. It wasn't necessarily her bed, but it was just sort of a metaphor for her being in bed and just being like completely exhausted. And I didn't know. I just said to her, do you feel tired? And she said, oh, I'm so exhausted. And then the next person got on the table, and I remember this one as well, where there was like a big clock on the wall behind her, and she was sitting in a chair, and she couldn't seem to settle down. And it seemed like the clock and time was really important to her. And so I said something about that, and her cousin happened to be there as well, and he laughed and said, oh, she's so obsessed with time. So I just thought, oh, wow, that's sort of interesting. And so, then it just sort of started from there. As I started to do sessions, I just started to see more and more things inside my head as I was working.
So every time we do a session, you see a vision. Do you control those visions, or they come to you whether you like it or not, or can you call up?
No, I don't control the vision at all. It just comes. My aim is to keep my mind clear, and just stay a little bit out of my thinking mind. And I'm an intuitive healer, so I've just developed over the years. I just like listen for the next thing to do. I listen for the next thing to do, and I will see. I don't see visions all the time, but I will see, I mean, I do for every session, and then I spend about half an hour with people after, and we just chat about what I saw and what it meant. Usually it's a metaphor. So for instance, I might see around someone's throat, if their throat chakra is very tight around their throat, I might see when I'm working on their throat, I might see this vision of them like behind a cement wall. Or I remember one person I saw, they were behind a cement wall, but there were these like sort of little gun portals in the wall, and they were taking a gun and they were going psh, 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 out through the wall. And so it was like really, I said to them, do you feel like you're like, as far as your throat goes, that you're pretty closed, but then sometimes you just have to like let people have it? And they said yes. So it's like I usually see metaphor to explain the energy around a chakra or around an emotion.
I think the initiation part is super important. It's almost like taking a match to some wood to turn the flame on. Sometimes
Yes.
it doesn't come to us naturally. We need somebody to reinforce what we already have.
Yes, I think the attunement is actually, I'm like the facilitator, but we say the attunement is actually an agreement with what we call the Reiki guides. So it's like an agreement that you make with the Reiki guides, and they're really the ones that do the attunement. I mean, I go through the motions, but it's really this agreement that you make with the Reiki guides to channel this energy. And so the class is important because it talks about, being respectful of people's, oh, sorry, there's like a huge helicopter that just went over my
It's all
house.
good.
We teach a lot. The class is a full day on, and a lot of it is, being respectful of people's energy, learning to do the work in a very sort of loving and graceful way. And so sort of making that agreement when you agree to have the attunement. So you're sort of working with the higher realms in a way to help channel this energy in a more of a focused way than energy is normally focused.
Right. Do you see your guides? Do they show up in a certain shape for you?
So when I work, I mainly see what's happening for other people. But we always call in, like when we start, we want to make sure that a room is, and that's why I really only like working in my room. Like I don't really like going out of my room to do work because I like to keep the energy in a container. So you want to keep the energy very protected and sacred, and you want to make statements around what energy you will sort of allow in the room and what energy you don't allow in the room. And what I always say is we allow in only the light. So we're only working with the light energy. And so we work from the higher self. That's the way my work has evolved. This is not necessarily a Reiki practice, but the way that I have evolved my work is that we always call in the person's higher self, and then I call in my higher self. And so we're just working at that level of sort of in the highest and best interest of the client. So we would never say something like, oh, we're going to start this session. I'm going to like heal. Today we're going to work on healing your knee or whatever, or making your back feel better, or healing your relationship with your mom, because we don't really know if that's in the highest good of the person. The person may think it is, but it may not be. So we just allow the energy to come in for the highest good of the person.
Right. And how much control do we have by declaring, I just want good energy, or divine and sacred being of the highest order? Like, how much control do we have in that, only that coming in, versus something else maybe? And is there something else?
Well, we live in a sort of a dualistic universe. And so I believe there are energies that are coming maybe from what's called the lower astrals. I don't work there. There are some healers or some psychics that do work work with lower astrals, with ghosts and dark energy and that sort of thing, more negative energy. My choice is not to work there. I'm grateful that there are people who do like to work there. So my belief is, in my experience, is that our intention is so powerful. So we are powerful beings. We're not at the mercy of energy. We can decide what's around us and what we will allow around us. And when we make clear statements and we really feel it and we really mean it, it's sort of like in your home, you have clear rules about what goes on in your home. You don't allow people maybe to come in with muddy shoes or smoke or whatever your rules are, and you're very clear.
In my home, they leave their shoes at the entrance, unless
Yes,
they're
so it's
really
that
attached to their shoes and
so
wearing
it's that
shoes.
same it's that same thing that you are in control of your space, and your intention is very powerful, and that includes in the more of the sort of spiritual world as well, as long as you're doing it with from a form of where you're feeling where you're not feeling fearful. Actually, it's better to feel joyful than fearful. Just if you just stand in your presence and call in your spiritual helpers, call in your own essence, call in your higher self. For me, that's it's a strong message, and it's strong. It's strong. It works.
So you said you're grateful for the people who work with the lower astrals or darker energy. Why is that, and what is that?
Well, there's some people who, they have, entities that come in their home, or ghosts or that sort of thing. And it's just never been my preference to work in that realm. And so I'm glad people do, because sometimes people are plagued by, unexplained phenomena. And it's just never really been an interest of mine to work in that area. But it's good that there's some people who do, and so people, if they experience that, they have someone that they can go to, for space clearing or that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think people can go crazy when they're playing in those realms because it's quite difficult, isn't it?
It can be difficult, especially because it creates fear, and fear puts you in a place of weakness. So
Right.
that's why it's really important to always be very to not be in fear, and it's because people feel that spiritual sort of the darker side of the spirit world can sort of get you, and it
Well, look at all the
it
ghost movies and the horror films that,
yes, all of
you know,
that is
grew
really
up. Yeah.
it's portrayed that way, and that we're weak and that we're sort of prey and that sort of thing. And I don't believe that that's true. Although, to be honest, I've never really been in too much of a situation like that. I just don't see ghosts, or I'm not really in that world, or that world has not come to me. So I'm not really an expert at it. And I guess that's why I'm glad that there's other people who are. I'm not sure I want to delve into that. I just haven't had the experience with it.
Yeah. I know you do Akashic Records. Can you share a little bit about what are Akashic Records and how did your work evolve since you learned how to do that?
Well, the Akashic Records are a place where it's like a sort of like a library of information. And within the records, there's like guides that are there. So we all have guides, our own guides in the Akashic Records, and they're called masters, teachers, and loved ones. So those are the beings or entities that step forward in an Akashic Record reading. And as when we learn Akashic Record reading, we really try to separate ourselves, our own ego, from those masters, teachers, and loved ones that step forward in the reading. So I learned the Akashic Records as a separate skill, separate from the energy healing. I had a reading with Anne Marie Pizzaro, who's an amazing Akashic Record reader.
Yeah,
I
she
had
was
many,
also a
many,
guest on this show. Yeah.
yes,
And
I
we,
had many, many readings with her before I decided to try Akashic Record reading. I was, to be honest, I was a little nervous at first because what I see in a healing session is what I see. I see what I see. It's not based on questions.
Mm.
You know, I see what I see and I relay what I see, but it's not like someone's asking me a question and I have to give them an answer. And so I was a little bit nervous about that. But with by taking the class with Anne, and I also took another class with another lady using the Linda Howe method of accessing the Akashic Records, it just took some practice. I think for me, what helped me was my ability to be, that I was already clairvoyant, so I could already see images as they came in my mind, and so I use that a lot in the Akashic Record readings I do. A lot of it comes through visions as someone asks a question, and then I will receive a vision. So that's just the way that it happens to work for me. It did take some practice just for me to get confident in, because, and the reason for that is because I really would not want to give anyone any information that was not coming from a higher source, that was coming from me or my
Right. So how do you
ego
know?
or something like that.
How do you know what's coming from a higher source, or what's coming from your own ego or
Well,
life?
we set the prayer process helps us get into that state. So we go through the prayer process. I also use a pendulum to help sort of swing my energy into the Akashic Records and out of my ego. And there's a feeling that you feel when you're in the record. So for me, it's sort of like almost like a little bit of a buzz in my forehead. And there's a place, so when you're in the records and you have to practice so you know if you're in or not, but when you're in the records, there's things that come through that you wouldn't normally think of. For me, I start talking a little bit faster, a little bit louder,
Really?
and so it's, and there's times also when I stop and make sure that I'm that I'm in there, in the records, and it's more of a sort of a feeling, sort of a place. It's hard to explain it, but for me, there's a feeling of it. I feel a little bit of a buzz in my head.
Right.
And that helps me to know that, and also you get confirmation from your clients because you'll say things that are, so the questions are a little different. So it's not questions like, should I leave my husband or quit my job? It's more about situations. And so whenever I would explain the energy around a situation, that I would have no way of knowing what that energy was. And then they say that that's true, then that's a good way to, especially at the beginning, it's a good way to know that it's not you talking, because you'd have no way of knowing that.
Did you get any experience that shocked you, either information that was given for yourself, for your life, or for your client?
I wouldn't say that it shocked me, and to be honest, I don't remember much about the readings that I do. They seem to leave, and the same with my healing, the readings I do for the healing practice. Actually, the whole sessions that I do, I write a little email to my clients at the end of the week, and I keep this little pink notepad, and so at the end of the week I have a little stack of notepads or notes to send to clients, and I'll look at the client or look at the notepad and I'll say, like, Susie Green or something, and I'll go, I don't even remember her. Like, I don't remember her at all, and I spent a few hours with her.
Wow.
So that's sort of interesting to me, that I just don't remember very much about what if I can recollect it, or they come back and say, oh, remember you told me this, then I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. But there's been many things that have come up that have been very, very interesting in sessions, and sometimes I remember one session I had with him. This was a healing session, but I was with him and just standing at his side, just running energy, holding his left hand. The left hand side of the body is usually about the past. So I was just standing there, and then all of a sudden in my third eye vision, this big long shotgun came up, a black shotgun, just sort of floated up into my vision. And I just really didn't know what that meant. I'm not like, I don't own guns. I don't know anything about guns. I don't really know why that came up. And so I relayed it to him later, which is sometimes a good thing to do rather than, trying to figure it out. I just relayed it to him later. And what he said was that his brother had been shot by one of those big shotguns, and that he felt very guilty that he hadn't been there. He felt for years that if he'd been there, I don't think he died from it, but he was hurt. And my client felt like if he'd been there that day, that wouldn't have happened, that he would have been able to intervene somehow. And so that was almost like a guilt that was hanging around in his energy field, and it took the form of this shotgun. And I guess his guides wanted that cleared, or it came up for me to see, and then we were able to talk about it a little bit. So hopefully it helped him relieve some of that guilt that he carried. So often things will come up that are sort of unexplainable, and then when they get brought into the light of day, it's interesting what the meaning of it is.
How long did it take you to trust yourself when you get those visions and not just say, oh my God, those are my thoughts and I'm not gonna believe that my thoughts?
It took a while, and there were a lot of things I didn't say because they were like, I thought they were too out there, and I just didn't say them. Sometimes it was better if I, in the early days, you're normally working with your friends or, acquaintances. And so, there was some times that I would say things that I felt were out there, and then, they would get verified. I remember one time I was working on one friend, and she was quite out there psychically, and I saw this sort of like guide around her that looked like a half human, half wolf. And I said to her what I saw, and she goes, oh yeah, that's one of my guides.
Oh, wow.
So, that sort of thing, the validation will come and, would come. But there was another lady that I worked on, and all I saw around her were like all these unicorns, just tons and tons of unicorns. And at that time, I didn't want to say to her, it was early on in my practice, I didn't want to say to her, oh, I'm seeing all these like unicorns around you. So I didn't. And then I noticed on her Facebook page, she had tons of unicorns. So that was sort of like a totem for her, like an energy that was around her. And I'm like, oh, darn, I should have told her that. But I didn't because I was afraid to. So of course I went through some time where there were things I didn't say that I saw. Now if I say it, if I see it, I say it. And that's really what I teach as well, because it's been rare that I have seen something that when I say to the person, oh, I saw this around you, does that make sense to you? That they say, no, I don't know what you're talking about. It's very rare. So if you're standing there and you've created a sacred space and something comes into your awareness, it is coming in for a reason, especially if you're not thinking of it. If you're not thinking of anything, I try not to learn too much about my clients before I work on them, because I want my process to be clear. And in fact, if I know too much, then sometimes it's not clear because it is my own mind. Yeah. And so I want sort of to work with a really clear, clean slate. And the work I do is not, it's not really about people's future. It's about what's in their energy field now and what that metaphor coming up might mean for them in terms of them looking at their own, their own life, their own spiritual progress, and deciding what can be done to work with that, to clear that. And I try to give people, before they leave, I try to give them some tips and tricks for, doing some clearing work or learning more, that sort of thing.
That's cool. You also do light language. What is that? What is light language? And how?
So light language, people are, if people look and Google light language, you'll see there's tons of it out there. I was even thinking of doing a light language YouTube channel, but there's so many people doing it that I felt I would never be, found in a search because I would come too far down on the algorithm, if I hadn't really gotten into it earlier. So light language is, people are calling it the language of creation. Some people say it's galactic. Some people, will write it as well. So written light language looks a little bit like Chinese, a little bit like squiggles, but there's a little more curves and spirals and that sort of thing in it. I don't write it. So the way it works for me, and it works, I think, a little differently for every channeler, but the way it works for me is it comes through specifically for the person, and it will come through as a song. I can sing it, or sometimes it comes through, and I'm not really a singer. So it's really interesting because I had a client who she was a music major, and her ear could hear perfect pitch. And I am not a singer. I don't have perfect pitch. But she said when I did it in her session, that it sounded like perfect pitch to her. So that to me is an indication that it's channeling and it's not me. It can sound like a lullaby. Sometimes it sounds like people are getting a little bit of a lecture. They're really sort of getting told, like, okay, come on, like, you've got to smarten up. You said you were going to start that business and you haven't done anything about it yet. So it sounds a little bit like that. Sometimes it sounds a little bit like, when you come home from college and your mom's filling you in on all the family gossip, just a conversation about what's going on. It comes in different sounds. It can sound very galactic. Sometimes it can be very low pitch, very Native American. It can sound, sometimes it comes in to help like ground a person or heal or clear a person. And other times it comes in, I think, more to almost like give them that message from their ancestors, or from if they have a galactic family, or they have Native American roots, or any type of root, not necessarily Native American, but their ancestral roots, that it will come in for them specifically to give them some comfort, give them a message. I feel like it comes in and they feel it later. It's almost like maybe they're worried, they experience the light language, which may be coming in to tell them, be strong, take action. And then later, a couple weeks later, they're thinking about applying for a job or something.
Oh, wow.
And all of a sudden they feel like, I think I can do that. I
Nice.
feel like I need to do that. It'll come like sort of later. It's not really so much in the moment. Although it can be, of course. But it's so, for me, I started just feeling this sort of tugging at my throat. And just this sort of tugging, and just feeling like I was going to start channeling something, but I really didn't know what it was going to be. And this was very personal for me. It was just something I did like on my own, like when I was walking around the house. And I just sort of started doing it around the house. I just sort of opened my mouth and these like sounds would come out. And I was like, well, that's weird. I didn't really even know about light language then, I don't think. And then I started doing it when I play crystal bowls in my sessions, and I started doing it in the crystal bowl work. And it just sort of came out gradually. Then I would just do it for people who, wouldn't think I was crazy. And then, and now I just do it in all my sessions.
Nice.
So usually if it comes in, I don't make it come in, and I can't really make it happen. Like I can't really give an example unless I sort of open up for something to come through. So it's interesting, but I'm not the only one doing it. In fact, I've had people, that I had this lady on the table one time. She was a realtor. She really wasn't too far down those sort of path of spiritual exploration. And she just said she just started doing it herself. And she was sort of shocked, of course. So a lot of people are doing it. It's not just me. It just seems like something that's coming through. Mm-hmm. And I don't really know. I've been told it's the language of creation coming in for people to. I'm not sure, but it's.
Are you open to
interesting.
try something with me? Maybe there is a message for me.
Sure, I'll try for you. For Orion. Okay, so I'm always a bit nervous to do this because I don't know like how it's going to sound. It could sound really like sort of really high pitched. It can go really fast. So
Do I need to do anything? Do I need to close my eyes
Pardon
or
me?
anything?
No, well, yes, you can close your eyes, and I'll probably get you to breathe at the end, just so that you can listen. So I want you to just like drop into your heart, listen with your heart. So this is a message really for your heart. So it's sort of a message at the soul level. It's not really a message for your mind. So if you're sitting there trying to like figure it out, you'll sort of miss it. It's just about experiencing it. Okay, so just see what's going to come through for Orion today. Está kana musta shahare omare kina kasa shakala hino bode boy si shahara kina da de obala hino bobai hikina sa shahala yobani ko bi distikale hono de distakare kadapa hina hoboba sa shakaha ili di kobani di do bististika e dina obasti shahala kopa hai kopana di kahare omare di kashakati homa hila hai oboba kai distakare nale kada hapostaki hebo abasa shakale yana di obo obada kina de dio bani ala heodo bosai hera harshoko bahane kare di do bana dala e di go basa shahale yana sahibo e ba e sashare o baraki on bali on ma di no bosi tikari kon mahali kidada he shakare hodo bahane di da hale on bada kasa shahe o mane diala ianari ko hasta sta shakare dano bo bai hola kari dia mai o bai o busa shakari anari ala hay anari do ba e dana sa shakari o bolo kuba hiki he sashana da haido ama ba holo ba de dikono basari kanado Ishta haka hita hata sasha korobo bahdino hela kari duba hubu ai sashana dai ubu anaka yobu hurakadaka sashana harabu abanaki.
Many of us have been through some stressful times in the last couple of years. I know I have. And I am very grateful for my coaches and for the hypnotherapy sessions that I took that helped me. And I want to extend this to you as well. If you want to feel unstuck, break through some limiting beliefs, maybe you want to lose weight or attract the love of your life, maybe you just want to step into your power, then do yourself a favor and book an RTT session with me. RTT stands for Rapid Transformation Therapy, and it is indeed very rapid. Most people get their breakthroughs within 1 to 3 sessions, and then they just step into the person they want to be, and they change their lives, they change their health, they change their identity. I love you, I'm here for you, and I want to help you. And as my podcast listener, you are getting 25% off your first RTT session. Woo-hoo! So go to speakwithorion.com and book a 15-minute call with me, speakwithorion.com, and we'll take it from there. And now back to the show.
Okay, just take a deep breath. Just take a deep breath.
So cool.
Okay, so did you feel anything from that?
I felt my heart expanding. It was
I
so.
felt like it was like sort of in a way like it was a message from a particular guide,
Uh huh.
almost like almost like an ant, like that sort of if you have an ant, that energy where she'll come in and like if your mom told you something, you might not listen to your mom, but you'll listen to your aunt, and she'll it's sort of a message like, do you know this, do you remember this, I want you to listen and do this and do that and
And
pay attention. And
that's what
so it
he
was sort
told
of like
me.
that, a message like that.
It
Yeah,
was
it
so
was
cool.
maybe about something about your gifts, something about your your next steps. And it was like encouraging, but there was an encouraging aspect to it, but there was also this aspect of, come on now, time to start. But it really wasn't the lecture so much. It was sort of the nice version of the lecture.
Thank you so much. That was so freaking cool. I had an experience. I don't know if it's light language or what it was, but I had an experience when I went to a Donny Epstein seminar. I don't know if you know him. He does network spinal analysis. I think that's what you call it. But he's a master wizard, and you can put somebody on the table and just touch the air behind them, and then you actually physically see a wave on their spine.
Oh
And
wow, that's amazing.
people start talking in tongues and get into those super higher states. I know I did when I was there. And then he's got also SRI, which is kind of like you do it in a group and you do all kinds of movements. And after we did the movements, he said, okay, let your like angelic voice come out, or you something from the inside. And I did like and then all of a sudden I moved into a pitch that I do like to sing, but this is something that I can never ever do if I intend to, unless I take incredible trainings. But super high pitch and super like operatic type of sound that came out,
Yes.
and it was just like I don't know this high D. I don't know what it's called in the scales, but it was just like high C. I don't know, but it was just super high pitch and super long, and it felt very very good. But it was almost like channeling through me, and I don't
Yes.
know how my vocal cords did that. It was incredible.
Yes, it is. So you were, doing, I guess, a form of light language or toning, angelic. There's also something called angelic toning, and when that angelics come through, when I do it, it's very high pitched as well. And sometimes I just try to keep my like ego to the side, but sometimes my ego pops in and goes, "Oh no, we're gonna go high here. I hope this is like," ooh." So yeah, and my voice can do what it, like you
My
said, what
ego
it normally can't
was
do.
like, wow, I really hope everybody could hear that, and I'm sure everybody could hear that. I was like, that was so cool.
Yeah, so you may be one of the many people who are going to start channeling. So I understand it's different from speaking in tongues. I did speak to a lady who was
It
familiar with
sounded like
speaking in
a real
tongues.
language when you did that. It sounded like a real ancient language or native language. It did sound like a real language.
Yes, it does sound like a language. So the speaking in tongues, what I understand that is that's more for like a congregation where there's someone who speaks in tongues and it's a message for the congregation, and then in a church like a Pentecostal church. And then there's usually a person there who can interpret that message, and then there's an interpreter. So it's just a little, I mean, it's the same idea, but I think it's just a little different in that yeah, it's just a little different. How maybe the source of it is a little different. I'm not sure, but it's that. Yeah, so you may. Yeah, so if you get this, like feeling that you want to just like open your throat and just let some sounds out. That's how it's just started with me, and then I just started like doing it around the house, and so
Yeah.
you have to start with something, and you've already like had an initiation into it.
Yeah, on my last visit to Israel, there were like we were there through major lockdowns. It was horrible. So people were gathering in the parks, and there was this workshop, and this lady. I think I didn't know it was light language, but she was like singing in this singing in tongue, and she was jamming. We were jamming, and I started singing too, and stuff came out too. I don't know what came out, but it felt really fun to do that.
Yes, it's fun. I had a one of my clients, she could do it, and so we did it together, and we had it was like it was so interesting. We didn't know what we were saying, but I could feel the emotion. It was like we were sisters talking together.
Nice.
And as sisters, sometimes you'll say, "Oh, I want to tell you about this story," and then the other one will go, "Oh, no, 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 I don't want to talk about that." Like there was this like sort of, and then there was laughter, and then there was like, oh, it was like we were talking about like family news, and we just went back and forth. It was just really fascinating, but we don't know exactly what we were saying. But it was like you knew when something was funny, or you knew when something was when you felt sort of like a little irritated with her, like, oh, don't say that sort of thing. So it was just fun. Yeah, it was fun to play with it. So yeah, I encourage you to do that.
Yeah, well, I'm super grateful for this experience. It was like I feel lighter right now. I feel different.
Good.
Yeah.
That's very good.
Before we say goodbye for now, what are your three top tips to living a stellar life, and where can people find you?
Okay, well, I always tell my clients this. The most important thing that you can do if you're on any sort of a journey, but especially on the spiritual journey, the most important thing is to know yourself. So that means like watch yourself, notice your triggers. Just be curious about why you get mad when you get mad, why you get depressed when you get depressed, what triggers you, just notice yourself. And the other one is, of course, to love yourself. So self-love is so important, and dropping into that heart space for yourself. So if you notice that, maybe you always get mad when somebody talks about this or that, just notice it and go, oh, it's okay. It's okay. And anytime you can, just anytime you notice yourself being mean to yourself, that you just stop it. And that, if you're used to being at a party and going in the restroom and looking at yourself in the mirror and going, oh, you look terrible today, that you just sort of stop doing that. And you say to yourself, you look okay. I sort of like your hair like that. Just be sort of easy with yourself and notice yourself. Those are important. And also, there's something that I think people can do that I always start off my sessions with this with my clients, and that is to call in your higher self. Because our higher self is us. It's just us when we're awesome. It's us when we're wise and funny, and when we're kind, and when we're just on point. And so we want to call her into us, or him into us, more and more consciously. And the higher self is the one that can look down the road and see around the corner. So the higher self is the one that says to us, I don't think you should go to that party tonight, or maybe this guy isn't for you.
Yeah.
So to call in your higher self, it's this statement, and the statement is this. You just have to say it out loud, because you have to call the vibration. You have to use your throat chakra and call that vibration in, and it is, I am my I am presence. I am my I am presence. I am my I am presence. And then take a moment and allow that energy of you, that higher energy of you, to come into you, sift into you. You'll just notice that when you look out through your eyes after you do that, you have to say it out loud. And sometimes you might be in a situation where you won't want to say it out loud, so just sort of say it under your breath. You'll just notice when you look out through your eyes are just a little bit wiser. Your back is a little bit straighter. When I call in my higher self, she's always saying to me, stand up straight, stand up straight. So just try that, bringing in that higher self. So people can find me on my website at KarenWilsonHealing.com, KarenWilsonHealing.com. And if you're ever in the visiting on the Gulf Coast, I'm in Corpus Christi, Texas, right down on the Gulf of Mexico. I'm actually on North Padre Island, just here half a mile from the Gulf. If you're here in town, it would be great for us to have an in-person session. But if you are not able to come here, then I do the distance sessions and the Akashic Records as well. And I always include the light language in the distance sessions, so you get a dose of that in your recording. And I also teach some classes. I teach a class on intuitive development. And I'll probably be, doing some other classes, and I also host retreats here as well. And I do some Zoom meditations with the bowls and all of that. So all of that will be posted on my website, and you can always just join in. It'd be wonderful to connect.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Karen. This was such a fun experience. Thank you for everything. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and sharing your light with all of us.
Thank you so much, Orion. I'm really very grateful to have been with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, listeners. Remember to know yourself, love yourself, and call in your higher self, and have a stellar life. This is Orion. Till next time.